Hey guys, good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good. Thumbs up? Good. Great. Okay. So, I was thinking we could start off today by using like one word to describe our week. My word is sleepy. What's your guys' word? Chaotic? Oh, yikes. Wet? Oh, yeah. Today is like kind of wet. What else? Anything else? Very sleepy. Yes. I feel like today is just like sleepy weather and it's making me tired. Well, let's wake each other up. Let's stand up. You guys ready to sing? We're going to jam with the keys today. So let's pray together. Dear Lord God, I just thank you so much for the opportunity to stand together as one to praise you, Lord. And I just thank you that we have the freedom and the opportunity just to shout your name and just to sing with a joyful noise. And I just pray that you continue to be with the service, Lord. Help every one of us to understand what Shawn's going to preach today, Lord. And I just thank you again for the opportunity to sing together and even pray. Amen. Amen. So this one we haven't sang in a long time. It's kind of an oldie, but it's a goodie. Sing this with me. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Won't you open the eyes of my heart? I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Won't you open the eyes of my heart? I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted to know and follow hard after you, to grow as your disciple in the truth. This world is empty, pale, and poor compared to knowing you, my Lord. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Thank you, guys. You can be seated.
All right. That was kind of nice. When I'm up here, I can't hear you guys sing as well from on the stage, so it was nice to be with you in the congregation, like hear you guys singing. That was awesome. Good singing. Good singing. Way to go. Yes. So last week, my hope is that some of you guys felt a little uncomfortable at this point in the service when I said, let's all fill out our connection cards. Some of you guys didn't do it. And we were sitting here for like 2 minutes filling out connection cards, and you guys were probably sitting there like twiddling your thumbs or whatever. But I hope that you will do that with me right now. So we have 2 ways for you guys to let us know what your prayer requests are. Let us know if you have any questions. Let us know if you have any thoughts or whatever, or if you need help this week, whatever that is. We've got our connection card. We have it digitally, and we have it as like an actual piece of paper. So if you grabbed one off the back table, you can fill it out on the actual piece of paper. But the best way to do it is to go either onto the church app or onto pondhill.net/Sunday and fill it out. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go to pondhill.net/Sunday. Last time my father went away on vacation, I changed the picture on this website to be a picture of me instead of a picture of him, but I didn't change it back when he came back, and he saw it, and he was like, sneaky. Sneaky. That's right. That's right. All right. So listen, any prayer requests that you have, anything that we can do to help you, go ahead and throw that in the Help Stay Connected section on pondhill.net/Sunday. I'm going to do that right now. I always feel like I'm forgetting somebody's name. All right. Okay. Hopefully you guys did that too. Go ahead and I won't be offended if you're typing on your phone while I'm talking. It's okay. You can continue that process. Oh, I have so many tabs open right now. That's not right. I'm a bad millennial. There we go. Man, I'm so excited that we can be together today. I'm excited that we get to pray with one another when we get together. We had a great time after service last week. It was last Sunday of the month, so we stayed after and we prayed. And it was just an awesome time to kind of air out some of the requests that we have. I know that everybody has something that they want prayer for. I know for sure that there's something in your life that maybe you're going through a difficult time. Maybe you know a friend that needs Jesus. Maybe you just need a little extra boost today from the Holy Spirit. And some coffee, and we can pray for all of those things. So what I want to do is I want to take a moment. I want to have a time of prayer right now. And here's what I want you to pray for. We usually do a missions week right now, but I want to do something special today. Next week, we have a guest speaker, which means everybody is going to be here next week, and it's going to be overcrowded, of course, because we have a guest speaker. His name is Keith, and he's from the Hope Pregnancy Center, and so he's going to be speaking with us next week. It's going to be an awesome Sunday. Don't miss it. What I want to do today is take a moment to pray for them. They are just a great ministry right next door in Cheshire, and they are helping new families or people that are pregnant or people that are just having trouble raising their young children. And they provide supplies, training, and, of course, the gospel as well to these families. And it's all, like, they don't charge anybody anything. And so they take donations, and they kind of just keep going. They've been around for a while, and they're amazing people. So I can't wait for you guys to meet Keith, because I bet most of you guys have not met Keith. He's a great guy, and he's going to be with us next Sunday. So let's pray for him as he's getting ready to share with us what's on his heart and what the Spirit has been talking with him about this upcoming Sunday. And let's pray for the Hope Pregnancy Center as well as we're bringing our own requests. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait a moment. I'm going to let you guys air out those requests to the Lord on your own, and then I'm going to close this in a few moments. Jesus, you are so good to us, and we thank you for your presence here. We thank you that all the requests that we're thinking about, all the ones we're mentioning, all the ones that we're writing down, and the ones that we keep to ourselves, those are requests that you know, that you hear, that you care about, and that you desire to answer those questions and provide the strength, provide the healing. And we thank you so much for your love in that way. I pray that you would be with us this morning as we jump into your word, as we talk about what can potentially be a difficult topic. I pray that we would be surrendered to you, that we would say, God, your way is better than our own way, and your thoughts are higher than our own thoughts, and that you would give us that passion to follow you this morning. I pray for our partners at Hope Pregnancy Center, that they would just be blessed in a special way today, and that you would be with Keith as he gets ready to speak to us next Sunday. Thank you for their desire to connect with their partners, and thank you for the food and the supplies that have come in for them already that we've been raising, and thank you so much for the generosity shown there. And I also would just pray that you would help us this morning just to see your face more clearly, because we know that as we get to know you, we are prompted to follow you closer. In your name I pray. Amen. All right, last week I began with a story from the Gospels about 4 fishermen and their first interaction with Jesus. So this week I want to do the same thing. I want to start with a story about Jesus. This is a different story. It's more into Jesus' ministry. It's further down the road, but it starts in a similar way. Jesus is in front of a large crowd. He is speaking, and so the setting is very similar. Now, in the middle of his talking, his family comes and knocks on the door and says, I want to see Jesus, while he's talking, right? It's his mom, his brother, and that's where we're at, okay? Matthew 12, 46 through 50. It's in several of the Gospels, but we're going to read this account here. It says this, while he, that's Jesus, yet talked to the people, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, desiring to speak with him. Then one said to him, behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to speak with thee. But he answered and said unto him that told him, who is my mother and who are my brethren? He stretched forth his hand towards his disciples and said, behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of the Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Now, I don't know about you guys. I read this story, and I am sort of stricken by what Jesus says here, because it seems a little bit rude. I don't know if you guys are kind of picking that by, but it feels like weird to me that Jesus would do this. But what Jesus is doing here is really important. And there's a term that I want to use with you guys this morning. You might have heard it before, but the term that I'm going to use is chosen family. Have you guys heard that word? It's sort of like a buzzword right now. It's kind of like a thing that people are saying. We're going to talk about chosen family and what that means for us here. That's sort of become the popular term for your close inner circle of friends. Your close inner circle of friends sort of become known as the chosen family. Seems to be the buzzword. Usually I don't particularly like trendy terminology like that, but I actually think this is a really good term, and we are going to use it this morning. So in our series, Instruments of Righteousness, that we've been going through so far, we've talked about several relationships that we all have that can help us become more righteous, can grow us closer to Christ. So we started in the home. First, we talked about the marriage relationship, and we said your spouse is designed to make you more righteous. That's kind of the end goal of marriage, is to make each spouse more righteous and follow God closer, reveal the Lord closer. And so we talked about that. Then we talked about the parent-child relationship, which we talked about how there's a responsibility that both the parents and the children have to grow themselves in righteousness as well. That's a great opportunity to grow in righteousness, to display the characteristics of Yahweh, to kind of air that out in the family context. We had an online-only service that was about the church. And really what we talked about with the church was that God has knit the church together to be more than just a group of people that come together on Sunday, but a family of God. And that's why he often uses that terminology when he talks about the church, that it's more than just a Sunday thing. It is bigger than that. Last week we did something a little bit different. We stopped using the word family last week, which I don't know if you guys picked up on that. Everything else we've kind of talked about family. This one we're sort of talking about family because that really gets to the heart of a close relationship. But last week we talked about the other people that we spend probably the most amount of time with, and those are the people that we work with. Whether you have a job or not, there's probably somebody that you tend to spend a ton of time with because you're doing something that's work-related with that person. So we talked about our coworkers, and actually our workplace is an awesome bed of righteous growth. And sometimes you don't always see it like that, but it is truly a place where we can live out our righteousness, live out the calling that God has called us, and actually be shaped by the people that we work with, regardless of whether they are Christians or not. Today we're going to talk about another place that's outside of the family. This one's a little bit different, though. So, like I said, with the church, we kind of talk about the church as a family because the church is knit together so closely. Now, with the church, God is the one that has knit the church together. He's designed this idea of the church to be a family. He's commanded us to love each other. So there's sort of this outside force, in this case, Yahweh, who's knit us together. At your workplace, there's also this outside force that sort of knit you and your coworkers together because you guys work at the same. There's a shared experience, you know. With your family, you don't get to pick which family you're born into. It just happens, right? You don't get to pick who your parents are, who your children are, and then I suppose with your spouse, you certainly pick at the beginning, but then afterwards you're sort of stuck with them, right? Right afterwards. So there is kind of a greater force than just your choice in that situation, because your bond of marriage is designed to keep you in the bond of marriage forever. So there's certainly days that maybe you wouldn't make that choice in that moment, but hopefully you have the perspective that's wider than that if you're married this morning. But friends are a little bit different, because friends are really, they're the family that we choose to have in our life, especially close friends. Maybe there's some acquaintances that are just there because you happen to go to the same places or whatever. But those really close friendships that I hope that each of us have are really relationships that we make a conscious effort. We choose to invest in each other. We choose to stay friends, to keep up with another. I know certainly some of my closest friends are friends that I had from college. Now, I went to college in Ohio, and some of them are very far away from here. In fact, most of my friends do not live here. And my only friend that was from Connecticut is in the Marines in Georgia, so he's super far away too. So if I want to stay friends with those people, I really have to make a conscious effort. But even somebody that lives down the road from you, you got to make that choice to stay friends with them. And so really, the ones who you choose to be your friends are those people that make up what we're calling our chosen family today. So what I want to say here, though, I want to give a quick caveat. because in Scripture, when the Scripture talks about friends, the friends that are mentioned in the Bible specifically are Christians as well. So we're going to have a little bit of overlap. If you guys watched the church online-only sermon that we did on the church, there is going to be a little bit of overlap here because these people are both part of the church together and they're also friends, the examples that I'm going to give. But I think that there is a special chosenness that goes into the chosen families that we're going to be talking about. So I do want to give that they're not just allied by their friend relationship, they're also allied by being part of the church, being both followers of Yahweh. And so don't get me wrong there, and there will be a little bit of overlap, but I think it's going to be mostly new material for you guys this morning. Okay, you guys ready? Yes? Good. All right. So the Bible definitely exemplifies this concept. There are tons of friend pairs or groups of friends in the Bible that do incredible things, and it's heavily implied that they do those things because of their friendships, okay? That it took more than just one person to do what that is. Now, that story that we talked about with Jesus is a really clear-cut example of this, because literally Jesus' biological family comes and says, hey, we want to talk to you, and Jesus stretches out his arm and says, these people that I'm choosing to spend my time with, these guys are my family. I don't think Jesus is necessarily being rude here. I know that it really strikes us. He's certainly trying to be brash in the moment, but I think he's showing us that he is making a conscious effort to spend his time with these people, the family that he has chosen here. But there's a lot of other examples too. So I want to go through a couple Old Testament stories. Maybe if you've spent any amount of time in church, you've probably heard about some of these. But yeah, let's just run through this list really quick. I'm sure some of them you may not be familiar with, but a lot of them I think you will be. Abraham and Lot when Abraham is called, Lot goes with him, and they really encourage each other as they're traveling to essentially be the progenitors of a new nation of Israel. Moses and Aaron are both kind of almost equally involved in the Exodus story, and certainly afterwards. Moses is definitely the clear leader there, but Aaron is really integral to what is going on in the wilderness there. David and Jonathan, of course, are some of the best of friends that we think about when we think about friends in the Bible. They really are the ones that established the Davidic kingship. You got to recognize David would not have become king were it not for Jonathan, because Jonathan saved his life several times. And Jonathan was supposed to be the next king. So that's something that we don't necessarily go. Jonathan essentially surrendered his kingship to preserve what we now know as the Davidic kingship, which eventually brought about the line that leads to Christ. Esther and Mordecai saved the Jews from Haman's wrath in the book of Esther, which is amazing. I just got through studying that book, and if you haven't done that, do it. It's a good book. Ruth and Naomi, which is what I'm currently studying, exemplified chosen family maybe better than anybody else, because Ruth literally says, where you go, I will go. Zero ties to Naomi between Ruth and Naomi. There really is no responsibility there, but Ruth really chooses to stick close to Naomi, and it ends up becoming just this beautiful story in the book of Ruth. Elijah and Elisha are perhaps maybe the most powerful prophet pair in Scripture. And they had sort of like an apprenticeship relationship, but really Elisha came to Elijah at a pivotal point in his ministry where he was really down, and Elisha was a really big answer to prayer to Elijah, which is really hard to talk about. But yes, they're two of the most well-known prophets, and they did some incredible things together. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Meshach, Abednego. Well, what's the other one? Thank you, Shadrach. I had a little blip there. And they exemplified excellence in Babylon such that the king even praised God. We actually talked about that last week, so I won't spend too much time on that. But it was all four of them that were integral to that process, not just Daniel, whose name is used for the book. Haggai and Zechariah prophesied together to Israel when they were returning to Jerusalem and rebuilding during the Babylonian captivity. And it's Haggai. Yeah, Haggai's book specifically mentions that they prophesied with one another. So does Ezra and Nehemiah as well, that it was both of their efforts that caused the people of Jerusalem to kind of get up and get busy building the wall, building the temple. So those are just a couple examples from the Old Testament. Now, these are stuff that were just like top of mind. So if you really dug into Scripture, you would find many more examples of what's going on. And I only use the Old Testament because we're mostly going to be reading from the New Testament today. And there's plenty more examples. So what I want to get across to you is that there's a lot of precedent for this. Friends is something that's important to the way that God chooses to do ministry. And so if that's the case, if it's the case that God cares about our friendships, then we should probably care about what God has to say about our friendships as well, right? That should be something just like everything else in our life that's surrendered to the Father. And we should care about what he has to say about our friends. So let's take a look. Here's kind of my summation of what's going on. And here's what it is. Ready? When choosing your chosen family, choose friends who aren't afraid to push you towards righteousness. Also, be that kind of friend. Because there's kind of it's a double-edged sword today. Because we're talking about how you choose your friends. We're talking about chosen family. We're also talking about how you be the kind of friend that should be chosen. Right? Does that make sense? So it's kind of like a two-edged sword here. The same qualities that we're looking for in other people really should begin in ourselves. And we should be that kind of friend. So let's begin again with Jesus. Jesus had a bunch of followers, okay? We all know this. We've talked about 2 stories these past 2 weeks where Jesus is just overcrowded with people listening to what he said. He had a lot of people that followed him from town to town. But a little bit into his ministry, he separated 12 people who we know as the apostles to not just be his followers, but be sort of his inner circle, the ones who would help him with his ministry, and I would argue the ones that would become his closest friends. This, I believe, is Jesus' chosen family, the 12 apostles, among a couple others, because there's a handful of other people that are working behind the scenes that aren't mentioned for various cultural reasons, and I believe they probably were part of the inner circle as well. But the 12 that we know that authored a lot of the New Testament are these 12. If you want a quick list, Adam memorized these for life group this week, so you go quiz them. But here's the list. I'll help you out, man. I got it right here. Simon Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Nathaniel/Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, James, Lebbaeus/Thaddeus, Simon, and Judas. Lots of people had different names, kind of like me, how I have 2 names and sometimes different. A lot of people like that in the Bible as well. Now, some of these men are connected by more than just a bond of friendship, so I want to emphasize that Peter and Andrew are brothers. They had business partners, James and John. We talked about the 4 fishermen there last week. So they were connected by more than just friendship. Philip and Nathaniel were also friends prior to Jesus calling them. But as a whole, this is a really random assortment of people. Like, they're all from Israel, but really, Jesus called a very random assortment of people to follow him. They're from different towns, different backgrounds, different jobs. They react very differently to Jesus' ministry. They ask very different questions. A lot of them probably had age difference, although it's likely that most of them were on the younger side in maybe the teenage years, and with the exception of Peter, who was probably in similar age to Jesus. What I'm getting at here, though, is that it's a really diverse group of people, and I don't think this was by accident. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, the first quality of righteous chosen family is this idea of diversity. Diversity. Our chosen family should be really diverse. So let me show you how deep this goes, okay? Because some of you guys might find this pretty interesting, given our current culture and some of the things that are going on. So there were 2 people that I want to talk about. It's become very trendy to talk about them in theology right now. But I think that it's important. I want to take a slightly different angle here. 2 people, Matthew and Simon, not Simon Peter, the other Simon. So if you look at what they did, and in all of the accounts of the apostles, like the lists of them, we see these things specifically mentioned. So this is something that the scripture really wants us to hone in on, because it doesn't always say what they had as a job or how they were identified or whatever. So Matthew is identified as a tax collector. Now, what a tax collector was back then, the Romans came in, they occupied Israel. Israel was really upset because they were in captivity to another nation, right? So Rome comes in, they're going to collect taxes. The people that collected the taxes were Jewish natives to Israel that essentially consented to the Roman rule. So they were kind of on Rome's side, and they went around, they picked up the taxes for Rome, and then they picked up a little extra for their own salary. That's kind of how they worked. As you can imagine, these were not the most popular people in Israel. They were actually really, really hated, despised. The worst of the worst were the people that were A, unclean, and B, tax collectors. They were not nice people to be around, and people were very, very not a fan of them. So Jesus calls Matthew, who is a tax collector, to follow him. Pretty insane when you just think about that alone. But what I want to get at is the fact that he also called this other guy named Simon. Simon is described as being a zealot. And the zealots were actually on the other side of that conversation. So once again, Rome comes in. They occupy Israel. Most people are kind of in between about what it was. This was really, really common in the ancient world. But most of them didn't want to be under the rule of Rome. The tax collectors, opposite side of the spectrum, they're just happy to make a buck. They're fine with Rome, whatever. Other side of the spectrum were the zealots. In particular, Simon is described by the Greek word kananeos, and that refers to a specific group of people that were revolutionaries against Rome. So these people were very often causing riots, like lots of property damage, lots of violence. Oftentimes they would kill people or they would harm people. Very outspoken, like sort of like a little like militia within their town against Rome. That was sort of like the idea of these people. And so, as you can imagine, zealots and tax collectors, not a lot of mix there. Not good. Definitely on the opposite side of the political spectrum, and they certainly do not belong in the same list of friends. Does that make sense? They do not belong in the same group with one another. However, Jesus chose both of these people. He chose both of these people to be his friends. So these two people have absolutely nothing in common. There's two things that theologians can draw from this, but the big one that people are talking about is reconciliation between people of different political opinions, because that's super hot right now. I don't know if you know that or not, but there's a lot of heated disagreement between people on opposite political spectrums, people of different races, people of different whatever. And we believe, in Jesus' name, that reconciliation is more important than being right. And so this is an awesome example where Jesus kind of forces two people on the opposite sides of the spectrum to sit down with each other and be friends and be civilized and all that stuff. So that's cool. Awesome. That's not what I want to talk about, though. What I want to talk about is the fact that Jesus had both of these people as his friend. And then he chose both of these people as his friend. So there's something else at play here, more than just the reconciliation between Matthew and Simon. What else is at play is that why did Jesus think it was necessary to have two people with very different opinions on his chosen family, in his chosen family? I believe it's because Jesus cares about that diversity of thought. That's what I think. I think he cares about diversity of thought. I think he cares about all kinds of diversity, but particularly in this, we're looking at diversity of thought. Now, I mean, Jesus had to have had an opinion on this, right? He had to have thought something about the Roman rule. He had to have had some opinion. And I would probably challenge that particular thought as well, but that's not what we're doing this morning. What I want to say, though, is that regardless of where Jesus stood on the issue, he valued diversity of thought from these people. He wanted to be friends with two people who thought differently, who lived their lives differently, who were on the opposite side of an issue. And the biblical authors really went out of their way to show us that these two should be enemies, yet Jesus chose to befriend them both. I think Jesus did this really, really intentionally. In fact, I think diversity of thought specifically was on his mind. Why else would the books of the Bible have been written? We have many books of the Bible that say the same thing, but they're written by two different authors. That seems kind of superfluous. That's a great word. That seems kind of like, why do we have 4 Gospels that tell the same story, right? Why is that? Well, they're written by 4 different people, and they have different perspectives. And there's value in those different perspectives, right? We have 4 books in the Old Testament tell the same story, written by different people from a different perspective. This is something that I believe is super, super important to the heart of God, because God didn't design us to think the same way all the time. He values difference. And we need to recognize that when we're choosing our chosen family. If it was important to Jesus, I believe it should be important to us as well. See, but it's even more important to us because Jesus knew all the right answers. Jesus could look at a situation, he could pick out the moral high ground, no problem, right? We, on the other hand, we do not know all the answers. I know that might be earth-shattering to some of you. We do not know all the answers. We do not know what we think we know what the right thing to do is, but the reality is we do not. Most of the time, we don't have a clue. And a lot of times we waffle between two sides anyway, and we don't even know what the right answer is, or we think we know one week, and then a year down the line, you think the other way, and you think you're totally right that way. This is like a big pet peeve of mine personally, because if you get all of your information from people that look like you, that talk like you, that think like you, that say the same things as you, that use the same words as you, your information is really tainted. I don't know if you realize that, but if all of your friends are the same as you, then you're doing something wrong in your chosen family. You don't have the diversity that I believe God has created. We have such an awesome opportunity as Americans to make this happen, because our nation is, every single person in our nation is so different because of how we have been designed. And even here in Connecticut and New England, even more so than elsewhere. But I mean, you can have somebody that's a totally different culture right next door to you, whereas a lot of other nations may not have that benefit. Of course, some of them do, but here in America, I mean, like, okay, my grandmother is off the boat Italian on my mother's side. On my father's side, my grandmother lives in Texas, and their family has been in America for a long time, even some back to the Native Americans, in fact. And so right there, like, I have heavy, like, European, ex-Catholic side on my mom's side, and then my father's side is all, like, super Southern, raised fundamental. Like, even in my own family, it could be like whiplash if they're both around at the same time. It's different, and that's my background, but there's even more. I mean, I could go next door. My roommate right now was adopted from India, and he has a really different story than I have, and that's super cool. And that stuff is super common in America because we have the benefit of living in a nation, especially here in Connecticut, that's really diverse. Our church is very diverse. There's a lot of different stories here, and there is value in making sure that your chosen family is diverse as well. I could totally do like a whole series on this thing. This is something that's really, really dear to my heart, especially in this cultural moment. But I got to move on because there's other things that I think the scripture wants to tell us about our chosen family. But I invite you guys to really think about this. Really ask yourself a question. Do all my friends look like me? Do they all say the same stuff as me? Like, are their opinions all the same? Do they vote the same way as me? Like, all of those things are questions that you should ask. And if you answer yes to all those questions, that all your friends look like, sound like, act like, all of the things, they're the same as you. If all your friends are carbon copies of you, you are in an echo chamber, and you need to get out of there and find some friends that think a little bit differently than you do. Find some diversity in your chosen family. It was important to Jesus, and it's even more important to us. So here's the deal. I want to move into 3 examples from the Apostle Paul. Now, I talked about Paul last week, too. It's not necessarily that Paul is the most important example here, but the New Testament is filled with a lot of really practical stories from the Apostle Paul. So we're going to look at some of those here. There's 3 instances here, and there's 3 things that I think they show us about it. The first story takes place in Acts chapter 9. Paul has just been converted to Christ. Now, if you know the story of Paul, you know that he was zealously anti-Christian. He would hunt Christians down, throw them in prison, maybe even kill them. There's a lot of there's never outright said, but it's very likely that he had actually either consented to, he definitely consented to people being killed, but he may have personally killed people as well. But after a miraculous encounter with Jesus Christ, Paul is converted to a follower of Jesus, and he starts preaching Jesus' name where he was going to get other Christians and put them in prison. Amazing story. Now, recognize that the original apostles, he recognized that the original apostles could help him with his newfound ministry because they were kind of running the show from Jerusalem. And so he travels to Jerusalem and tries to get in contact with the original 12 apostles. But of course, they know his story. And they say, I don't know about this. This could be a trick. This could be a setup. So one of the local leaders in Jerusalem goes before Peter and the other apostles and advocates on Paul's behalf. So let's look at that. In Acts 9, 26 through 28, it says, and when Saul, that was his prior name, when Saul was come to Jerusalem, he essayed to join himself to the disciples. But they were all afraid of him and believed not that he was a disciple. Can't really blame him there. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles and declared unto them how he had seen the Lord in the way and that he had spoken to him and how he had preached boldly at Damascus in the name of Jesus, and he was with them coming in and going out at Jerusalem. So what happens here? They don't want to see him. I don't blame him. Like I said, Paul has a really checkered background, and this is new in his conversion, so they're not sure about who he is yet. And but this guy Barnabas chooses to stick up for Paul. He chooses to befriend Paul, and we actually see it throughout Acts. He becomes probably Paul's closest companion in ministry, more than just a co-minister, but also a friend, certainly part of Paul's chosen family. But actually we see here Barnabas choosing Paul as his friend as he chooses to advocate on his behalf. He knew that Paul's character was strong, and he also knew that Paul had a lot of potential, and he was right, because Paul goes on to write most of the New Testament. He also goes on to plant most of the churches in, they called it Asia at the time, but we kind of know it more as the Eastern Middle East. And so Paul was really a really important figure for the Christian faith, and I'm sure you guys have known that already. Now, this is super important. Being an advocate for your chosen family is super important. I love to mess around with my friends. You know, we call each other names and we joke around and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, being an advocate is so important. We have got to be for each other. Your friends need to be for you. They need to be your advocates. So if someone in your chosen family isn't somebody that you would vouch for, they probably shouldn't be in your chosen family. Does that make sense? They probably shouldn't be one of your closest friends if you can't vouch for them. And if they wouldn't vouch for you, the same is true. Can you vouch for the people that you spend the most time with, that you make a conscious effort to make part of your chosen family? I think that's really important because you have to be the one that's willing to vouch, but you also have to be somebody that is vouch-worthy, right? And you also have to be choosing your chosen family to be people that are also vouch-worthy. Barnabas saw that in Paul, and he was able to adopt an unpopular opinion at the time that Paul should be kind of let into the higher levels of ministry at that time. Here's a couple questions to kind of get you thinking about this. Are you the kind of person who badmouths their friends? Do you make a conscious effort to encourage your friends, both to their face and to other people when they're not around? If you were ever like an employer, would you hire the people in your chosen family? Would you be their character witness? Are you prone to gossip, or are your friends prone to gossip? When was the last time you stood up for one of your friends? Those are some challenging questions. As I was writing them, I was like, oh, wow, I could probably be a better friend to some of these people, you know? But I think advocacy is really important. That's one of the most important parts of our friendship with Christ as well. And I think he desires it for our friendship as well. Now, advocacy, though, it has to be held in tension with the next one. The next one is confrontation. Confrontation. One of the greatest ways that a chosen family can help each other grow in righteousness is by creating safe relationships in which we can confront each other, okay? We're not all perfect, okay? We don't need to pretend that we're all perfect. We all make mistakes. We're not the greatest people in the world all of the time, right? I think we can all agree on that. The cool thing is, everybody else is in the same boat. So there's no reason to judge. There's no reason to condemn others, because the reality is that their sin is the same kind of sin that I have, and my sin is the same kind of sin that they have, right? We're all kind of in the same boat with one another. So if that's the case, we are created to create accountability in those members of our chosen family. Accountability is super important because we understand that we're not perfect, but we want to grow in righteousness. That's what we're talking about, after all, in this series. So creating accountability is really important. Here's the thing. The world is going to do one of two things when your imperfections come out, okay? The world, this is like the greater outside the church, outside of your chosen family, all that. They're going to do one of two things. The first thing they might do is they may ignore it, right? Or maybe even encourage you to continue bad behavior, right? They're going to not confront it in some way, okay? The second thing that they may do is they may come down really, really hard and dehumanize you because of what you are going through. Those are like the only two ways that the world can deal with imperfections. It can either ignore them / encourage them, or they can come down super, super hard. So what your chosen family becomes is this place where it's dealt, because neither of those things are healthy, right? Where confrontation is dealt with in a healthy manner. It's that place where we can come to you as two human beings on the same level, drenched in the same sinfulness, but then confront you and call you to live righteously. Now, don't be misled, though, because I don't want to sell you something that's not true here. Confrontation is always hard. It's always uncomfortable. It's always going to bruise your pride. It will never be a fun experience to be confronted. That's not going to happen, okay? It's just not going to happen. But the goal in your chosen family is that the relationship will be worth more than your pride, which is bruised by the confrontation, or that your respect with one another causes your conversation to be both kind and firm, or that your history with each other compels you to stay in relationship rather than run away and never fix anything. See what I'm saying there? This is the perfect ground for constructive confrontation. So take a look at this example in Galatians chapter 2 between Paul and Peter and Barnabas as well. Verse 11 says this, but when Peter was come to Antioch, that was sort of Paul's home base, this is Paul, withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. Sounds like something that should be in like a smash rap or something. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. And the other Jews disassembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas was also carried away with their dissimulation. So there's some cultural things going on here between like Jews and Gentiles, or maybe some language there that doesn't quite mix. But the cultural idea was that Jews weren't supposed to eat with Gentiles. But in Christ, it's clear that there is neither Jew nor Greek, circumcised nor uncircumcised. That distinction has been done away with. And honestly, it shouldn't have existed in the beginning if you actually read the Old Testament anyway. But culturally, they didn't do that. And so what happened here, Peter was a Jew. He comes to Antioch, which is largely a Gentile state. We're outside of Israel at this time. And so at that point, because of the other Jews that were in the area who were extra elitist, right, because they were living in a place that was predominantly Gentile, Peter refuses to eat with the Gentiles. Obviously something that's not in congruence with Christ's message of unity and love for all people. And so Paul has to confront him to his face, is how the scripture is worded there. Notice, though, I like that it says confront to the face, because Paul doesn't go around bad-mouthing Peter, right? He doesn't abandon Peter. Instead, what he says is, I went to Peter, and I confronted him directly, man to man, and said, what you're doing is wrong. He definitely was not afraid to say that he was wrong. You can read the tone of the passage. He's definitely being firm here. But I think it's important that Paul went and confronted Peter and Barnabas, really, and he did it in a way that was constructive, because it did end. That kind of behavior was not continued from Peter, and certainly not Barnabas, because we see them traveling from town to town, speaking with Gentiles and Jews, both in their ministry. So this kind of behavior did end, and so righteousness was, Peter and Barnabas were grown in righteousness because of Paul's willingness to make a direct confrontation. Now, a respectful direct confrontation is always the superior option. In fact, it's actually scriptural. Jesus walks through in Matthew 18 how to make these types of confrontations, if that's something that you are interested in. Matthew 18 is the place to go. It starts and hopefully ends with a one-to-one confrontation, and it's supposed to be face-to-face. Once again, here's some questions just to kind of get you to think through this here, all right? When was the last time you confronted a friend? And how did that go? When was the last time a friend confronted you? And how did that go? How are you at receiving constructive criticism? Is the criticism that you dole out constructive? Do you find yourself passive-aggressively complaining about your friends? Or do your friends let you get away with whatever you want? Have you wanted to confront a friend but didn't because it felt too uncomfortable? When was the last time you invited confrontation by asking a friend if what you did in a certain situation was right? When did you invite that confrontation? When was that last done? Like I said, those are like really challenging questions. You don't quite get it until you read it out loud in front of you guys. Wow, those are tough, right? That really, I think, should cause us to think. It's causing me to think right now. And I hope it's the same for you. The next one kind of is hand in hand, but it's a little different, has a different tone. This one I described as challenge. Challenge. Here's the thing. Real friends challenge each other to do hard things. Real friends challenge each other to do hard things. Remember, we're talking about growing in righteousness. You can't grow if you're never challenged. Literally, as I was typing this, right? I'm typing it. my forearms and my triceps are hurting because Thursday, I was typing this yesterday. Yeah, so it was day 2. So Thursday, me and Kayla went to the gym and we worked out only triceps. Like literally, she was just like, let's just do triceps the whole time. And it was miserable. I hated it so much. And the next day, I was happy because I was like, oh, I'm not really that sore. But then 2 days later, that's when it kicked in. And I was pretty sore. I was typing, and I was like, wow, this should not be this challenging. But that's what we do, though, right? We do challenging things for our muscles so that in hope that we get stronger, right? That's the idea, that we cut through the flab and have some good muscles, right? That's the idea. So in the same way, we're called to challenge each other to grow in righteousness as well. There's a really interesting book in the New Testament that doesn't get a lot of attention that I thought would be really interesting to bring up today. It's only one chapter. It's one of the shortest books in the Bible, and I want to challenge you guys to read it this week. There's a challenge for you right there, because it actually identifies several of the key characteristics we've been discussing. So it talks about other stuff that we talked about already as well. Here's the gist of it, though. Paul's pretty old at this point. He's writing a handful of letters to churches that he's worked with over his ministry. These letters in particular are called the prison letters because Paul's actually sitting in a cell rotting because of preaching Christ's name. So they're called the prison letters because that's where he sends it. Now, prior to writing one of these letters, he meets this guy called Onesimus. And through Paul's ministry, Onesimus decides to become a Christian. He decides to follow Jesus, and he sits under Paul to learn about his new life that he's been given here. As they're talking, Paul realizes something from Onesimus, that there's actually a connection to an old co-minister of Paul, and you might have guessed who it is. His name is Philemon. See, Onesimus had actually run away from Philemon. Onesimus was an ex-slave who had run away from Philemon, and this was illegal, obviously. Don't forget about what I said last week. Really quick caveat. Don't forget what I said last week. When the Bible talks about stuff like this, it's not condoning slavery. It's not necessarily also referring to the slavery that we know as Americans from a couple hundred years ago. That's not what's going on here. The Bible is not condoning the slave-master relationship. In fact, it actually confronts it several places. But we've got to kind of move past that, okay? Because what it's doing is talking about what you should do if you find yourself in that situation, because many of the people that are reading these letters were in that situation, okay? And so not only had Onesimus run away, though, he had also wronged Philemon. It seemed likely that Onesimus had either stolen some property or some money from Philemon or sabotaged his business in some way, something along those lines. And it seems likely that he had stolen something. Paul becomes Onesimus' advocate, though, when he writes to Philemon. Verses 10 through 17, I beseech thee for my son Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my bonds, which in times past was to thee unprofitable. Onesimus' name in Greek means profitable, so there's a little play on words here. Which in times past was to thee unprofitable, but now profitable to thee and to me, whom I have sent again. Though, therefore, receive him, that is, mine own bowels, which is really weird, but whenever the Bible talks about that, it just means the deepest part of myself. Receive it as in you're receiving the deepest part of me, whom I would have retained with me, that in thy stead he might have ministered unto me in the bonds of the gospel. But without thy mind would I do nothing, that thy benefit should not be as it were of necessity, but willingly. For perhaps he therefore departed for a season, that thou shouldst receive him forever. Maybe this was for a reason, is what Paul's saying there. Not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved, specially to me. But how much more unto thee, both in flesh and in the Lord. If you count me, therefore, a partner, receive him, Onesimus, as myself. So you got to understand two things here. Paul's asking something that's immensely difficult. First of all, in the culture, this would be an outrage to receive a slave back and then exonerate them from slavery. No punishment, no nothing. Insane, crazy, culturally. That would be wild. The punishment for a runaway slave was torture and or death. Like, that was the only thing that you could do with somebody that had run away like this. However, Paul is asking Philemon to do something hard, anti-cultural here, by receiving him back and exonerating him as well. But even without that cultural element, Onesimus had wronged Philemon, so Paul's saying, hey, not only is he coming back, he's not coming back with any money. Like, he's not returning what he stole. What I want you to do is forgive that debt. And if you can't forgive it, put it on me instead. And so Philemon here is also called to forgive and to receive, not just as a servant, not just as a freedman, but as a dear friend, which Paul was. That's the challenge here. It's a serious challenge. Now, we know from the New Testament that Onesimus actually becomes a co-minister with Philemon in the place where he's going. So it's a beautiful ending to the story, and it's a wonderful book. I would encourage you guys all to read it this week. It's very short. But here's the deal, right? Let's ask some of these questions, because sometimes it's tough to challenge ourselves, right? Sometimes we lack the insight that we need to be challenged, but it's wise to take those large, challenging strides with somebody else walking beside you. It's wise, as the old video game character says, it's dangerous to go alone. None of you guys get that. Maybe like one or two. It's dangerous to go alone. It's true. It is. It's dangerous to go alone. We need that chosen family to be around us when we take those challenging strides. So think about these questions with me. What was the last challenging thing that you did? And who was with you when you did it? Who helped you along the way? Have you challenged a friend to do something hard recently? Have you ever called your chosen family crazy after they suggested you do something hard? Have you ever regretted not doing something that your friend challenged you to do? Do you feel right now like you're stuck? And are your friends just letting you stay that way? See, when we choose our chosen family, we want to choose friends who aren't afraid to push you towards righteousness. That's the idea here. When we choose the people who are going to be that close ring of chosen family, they've got to be people who are willing to push us, to propel us towards righteousness, and we've got to be that kind of friend too. We need to be that as well. So we've identified 4 things that should be present in that chosen family: diversity, advocacy, confrontation, and challenge. And I really think we should think through whether or not we have friends that are willing to do that for us. Now, I'm super good at telling people to friend dump their friends. I'm so good at that. If people are like, oh, my friend did this. Dude, friend dump them. You don't need that in your life. I'm not saying you should be mean to people. I'm not saying that you shouldn't love those people like Jesus. I'm not saying that you shouldn't even be like acquaintances or whatever. But when it comes to your inner circle, your chosen family, there's a lot at stake here. Those friends are going to affect you, and you want it to be a good effect, a righteous effect. And so if that's the case, man, you should friend dump those friends that are not doing this stuff for you. And on the other hand, you should make sure that you're the type of friend that's doing this for your chosen family as well. So I think that there's probably some people in your life who you might need to friend dump, but I think even more might be the case that you might need to look for some new friends. Maybe some of this challenged you to say, oh, I actually don't know if I have a friend that would do that for me. And I would definitely encourage you to find friends that will fit into those categories, that you need a group of people that are diverse. You need somebody that's going to stand up for you, that you're not afraid to stand up for. Somebody that's okay with confrontation, that they'll receive it okay, and that they'll give it when it's required, and people that will challenge you to do hard things to grow in righteousness. As Proverbs 18:24 puts it, there are chosen family members that stick closer than a brother. So if we're going to let people get that close, and we need to let people get that close, we've got to make sure that they are people that will push us towards righteousness. Let's pray. God, you are so good, and we thank you for the example of a great friend that you are. We know that these things are things that you're not afraid to do. They're things that you exemplified. And I pray that you would just give us wisdom when thinking about our friends. Thank you for the challenging words that you've spoken to me during this time. And I ask that I would be surrendered to you, that this area of my life would be something that is an area of righteousness. I pray that for the people here as well, that they would grow because of who their friends are, and that they would start with a deep friendship with you, because ultimately you are our advocate. You are the one that helps us think through things differently than we want to think through them, that challenges us to do hard things, and that brings confrontation when it's needed. So I pray that if somebody is not a friend of Jesus yet, that today would be the day that they inquire about that we'd be able to start that journey together. Your name I pray, amen. Here's some next steps for you. I think you should go home and read Philemon this week. It is very, very short. I would encourage you to do it. Proverbs 18:24 is a great verse to memorize. Many of you might already know the bulk of it. That's that verse that I referenced before that says there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Proverbs 18:24. I would definitely encourage you guys to take a look at that. And then find friends that push you towards righteousness and friend dump the ones that don't. All right? Find friends that push you towards righteousness and friend dump the ones that don't. I don't want you to be critical of all the people in your life, but there are those people that are the chosen family that I really do think we need to be careful who we let into that and really be intentional about looking for people that will help us grow in righteousness.